My father has always understood that people of all faiths, all backgrounds, and all communities deserve to be celebrated and supported. The news broke quietly, almost too quietly for what it meant. Within minutes, every television network in the United Kingdom carried the same headline. Prince William confirms tragic update on King Charles's health. The words rippled through social media, through living rooms, through the halls of Buckingham Palace itself. For months, rumors had swirled about the king's treatment, his frail appearances, his unexpected absences. But this time, the confirmation came not from palace aides or doctors. It came directly from his son, the future king, speaking with an edge of sorrow that no royal statement could soften. Outside the palace gates, the mood was unlike anything seen since Queen Elizabeth's passing. Crowds gathered, clutching flowers and phones, unsure whether to pray or to prepare for the inevitable. The palace itself remained shrouded in silence for hours. Reporters lined the mall. Cameras pointed at the windows that remained firmly closed. Across the Atlantic, international broadcasters replayed William's brief statement over and over. My father's condition is stable, but his illness is incurable. We are cherishing the time we have together. Those words, incurable and cherishing, were all the world needed to hear. King Charles's health had been the subject of speculation since his cancer diagnosis in early 2024. Buckingham Palace had released carefully worded updates emphasizing optimism, rest, and resilience. But behind closed doors, sources whispered that the treatments had taken a heavier toll than anyone expected. In public, the king smiled and waved, his posture proud, but his energy waning. He continued to meet ambassadors and sign documents, yet each appearance seemed to drain him more. Now, after months of uncertainty, Prince William had stepped forward to tell the truth. To understand how this moment arrived, one must look back decades to a time when Charles was the vigorous, athletic heir to the throne. In his youth, he was known for his love of polo, gardening, and hiking the Scottish Highlands. His fitness was part of his identity, proof that a royal life could be active and purposeful. He would rise before dawn, spend hours on horseback, and never complain about the bruises or the rain. Those who knew him then described him as tough, almost stubborn about his health. A man who refused to show weakness even when he was hurt. That pride began to show cracks in 1998 when Charles underwent knee surgery after persistent pain made public events difficult. It was a minor procedure, arthroscopic, common among athletes, but it marked the first time the public glimpsed his vulnerability. Then in 2003 came a hernia operation, another reminder that even princes age. Both times he returned to work quickly, making light of the matter, shaking hands with nurses and joking with photographers outside the hospital. But privately, those close to him said he began to think differently about his body and what it meant to endure. There were other smaller scares, a benign growth removed from his nose in 2008, a few tumbles during polo matches that left him concussed or bruised. Once he was thrown so hard that doctors feared a head injury. Yet Charles insisted on finishing the game. It became a royal trademark. Duty above discomfort, tradition above self. That same drive would later keep him standing before cameras long after his doctors advised rest. For him, the crown was not merely an inheritance. It was an obligation of spirit, something to be carried no matter the cost. Then came the pandemic. In 2020, when it was announced that Charles had tested positive for COVID-19, the nation collectively held its breath. He was 71 at the time, an age considered high risk. But his case was mild, his recovery swift. Isolated in Scotland, he continued to work remotely, taking video calls, reading daily briefings. The public saw it as proof of his resilience. Yet those within his circle began to notice subtle changes. Fatigue, shorter public appearances, and increasing reliance on aides. It wasn't alarming then, but it planted the seeds of concern that have now come to fruition. In early 2024, the palace released an unusually detailed statement saying the king would undergo treatment for an enlarged prostate. The transparency was praised as a new era of openness. The procedure was successful, and Charles appeared cheerful upon discharge. But only weeks later, the follow-up tests revealed something else, something more sinister. In February, Buckingham Palace confirmed that a form of cancer had been discovered. The exact type was not disclosed, fueling speculation and unease. For the first time, the monarch of the United Kingdom was a patient in a fight he could not fully control. From that point, the pattern became familiar. Hospital visits, short stays, cautious optimism. The palace would describe each episode as routine or precautionary. But as months passed, the strain showed. His weight dropped slightly, his skin palled, and public appearances grew shorter. Even so, he remained steadfast. He continued to meet the Prime Minister weekly, sign documents, and deliver short addresses. Yet, those who saw him behind the scenes said he was often exhausted. Now, with Prince William confirming that the illness is incurable, the long-guarded truth is finally out. It was at a charity event in London where William made the announcement. He stood at the podium, his expression composed yet heavy with emotion. Cameras flashed and a hush fell over the crowd. "My father has faced his illness with the courage we all know him for," he said. "But we have reached a stage where we must accept that some battles are not meant to be won, only met with grace." The room fell silent. Those words, simple, human, devastating, traveled faster than any official press release ever could. It was the first time a royal had spoken so openly about mortality since Princess Diana's death. The public reaction was immediate. Messages poured into the palace. Candles were lit outside Windsor Castle. Even critics of the monarchy expressed sympathy. For many Britons, Charles represented continuity after the loss of Queen Elizabeth, a bridge between old and new. Now his decline felt like the end of an era. William's decision to speak out was widely praised as brave and compassionate, but it also carried political weight, signaling that the transition of power, at least in practice, had already begun. Privately, insiders say King Charles has been preparing for this moment with quiet acceptance. In recent weeks, he has reportedly recorded personal messages, updated private letters, and discussed his wishes with the Archbishop of Canterbury. Those who have met him describe him as reflective rather than afraid. He has spoken of legacy, of leaving behind not just a reign, but a renewed sense of purpose for the institution. Like his predecessors before him, he has composed what Palace aides refer to as his last wishes, not in legal terms, but in moral ones. Royal history is full of such gestures. Queen Victoria asked to be buried in white with her wedding veil and a locket of Prince Albert close to her heart. George V urged that the monarchy stay humble and connected to its people. King George VI told a young Elizabeth to remain calm and steady no matter the storm. Charles, steeped in that lineage, is said to have expressed three hopes: that the monarchy continues to modernize, that his sons reconcile, and that Britain never forget the humanity of its crown. It is both a personal plea and a royal roadmap. That first wish, modernization, has already taken shape. Under Charles, the monarchy has slimmed down, focusing on core duties and transparency. William and Catherine have become the new face of that mission. Their warmth, approachability, and commitment to causes like mental health and the environment have reshaped how the public sees the crown. William's Earthshot Prize and Catherine's Early Childhood Initiative are seen as extensions of the king's vision, a monarchy that serves, not rules. Catherine, in particular, has come to symbolize the quiet strength that once defined Queen Elizabeth. Her composure during Charles's illness has earned admiration. She continues her engagements while raising 3 children and managing her own recent health challenges. To many, she embodies the future of royal womanhood, dignified yet relatable. Those close to Charles say he often remarks how proud he is of her, calling her the steady star of the next generation. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla has taken on more of the king's responsibilities. She has hosted receptions, met foreign dignitaries, and even presided over certain ceremonial functions. Her composure has been remarkable, especially given the scrutiny she faced for decades. Insiders say she has been Charles's anchor during treatment, reading to him, praying with him, ensuring he rests. Her devotion has softened public opinion and made her an unexpected symbol of endurance. Then there is Princess Anne, the family's quiet engine. She continues to perform hundreds of engagements each year, embodying the sense of duty her mother instilled. Those within the palace say, and has become William's unofficial advisor, guiding him through the complexities of stepping into his father's shoes. Her work ethic has made her indispensable during this uncertain time. But even as the royal machine adapts, one absence remains impossible to ignore. Prince Harry. The king's younger son has lived thousands of miles away, estranged from the institution that shaped him. His relationship with his father has thawed only slightly in recent months, with a few private phone calls and one brief visit after the diagnosis. Yet, sources close to the palace say the king still longs for reconciliation, often speaking of his two sons, two paths, one hope. Harry's story remains both tragic and defining. His departure in 2020 was meant to bring peace. Yet, it birthed years of controversy. His interviews, his memoir, his lawsuits, each deepened the divide. But now, with his father's health declining, there are whispers that even Harry feels the pull of duty again. He's torn, one insider said. He wants to be there, but he also knows his presence could overshadow the moment. Whether he returns in time remains one of the monarchy's most pressing emotional questions. William, meanwhile, has stepped fully into the role of acting monarch in all but name. He chairs state meetings, attends briefings, and oversees the day-to-day rhythm of the crown. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, those close to him say he is struggling. Watching his father fade while preparing to take his place is a paradox no son envies. He's trying to balance being the Prince of Wales and the son of a dying king. One aide confided, "That's a weight few can imagine." The nation now wonders what comes next. Could King Charles abdicate? Could Britain see another living monarch pass the crown before death? History offers only one modern precedent. Edward VII in 1936, who gave up the throne to Mary Wallace Simpson. But that was a choice of love, not health. If Charles were to step down, Parliament would need to pass a new act, an abdication law specific to him. Legal scholars say it's possible, but improbable. Charles views his reign as a sacred duty, one to be fulfilled until his final breath. More likely, the monarchy will rely on existing mechanisms like the Regency Acts, which allow councillors of state such as William and Camilla to perform duties on the king's behalf. This arrangement has already begun quietly. William signs certain documents, attends investitures, and represents the crown abroad. It's a delicate balance between continuity and respect, ensuring the monarchy remains functional while the king rests. As the days pass, the world watches not only a royal family in transition, but a father and son navigating the unspoken goodbye. Cameras capture William leaving the hospital, his jaw tight, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Each image tells a story of dignity meeting grief. The public senses it, too. The feeling that an era is closing, that the man who waited 70 years to be king may not reign much longer. Inside Buckingham Palace, preparations continue for the inevitable. Documents are updated, ceremonies outlined, logistics quietly rehearsed. Yet, even in these practicalities, there is tenderness. Staff members speak of how Charles insists on writing personal thank you notes, how he asks daily about the gardens, the weather, the world outside his window. His reign, short but meaningful, has been defined by compassion, a bridge between the ancient and the modern, between ceremony and sincerity. For Prince William, the path forward is both clear and daunting. He will become king sooner than expected, inheriting not only the throne, but the responsibility of healing a family and a nation. His words, steady, compassionate, resolute, already reflect that destiny. As one royal historian put it, the crown has already begun to rest on his shoulders. And so, Britain stands at the edge of change once more. The image of King Charles, frail but dignified, waving from a car window, will linger in collective memory. Prince William's voice, trembling yet brave, has given the truth its final shape. The monarchy, like the man who leads it, is mortal. Yet in that mortality lies its most human strength, endurance. Whether King Charles reigns for months or years more, his legacy is already written in service, in family, and in the unspoken courage of facing the end with grace. In the days that followed, the United Kingdom seemed to hold its breath. The rhythm of national life slowed, as if the very air around Buckingham Palace had thickened with expectation. Crowds gathered in quiet clusters at royal residences across the country. Sandringham, Windsor, Balmoral. Each place tied to memories of the king's long life in service. Outside Clarence House, bouquets lined the pavement. Some carried handwritten notes. "Thank you for your grace. For king and country, always." The palace guards, stoic as ever, stood at their posts beneath a sky that felt heavy with history. The Prime Minister visited the king privately that week, a meeting described as brief but profound. No official details were released, only a statement confirming that His Majesty remained informed of all affairs of state. Yet, word quietly spread among political circles that the conversation had been less about governance and more about legacy, how to preserve stability when the inevitable moment came. Charles, those close to him said, spoke softly but firmly. "The crown endures. It always has and it always will." Inside his private quarters, the king was said to spend his days surrounded by books, letters, and soft music. His beloved dogs rested near the window while Camilla read aloud from poetry or scripture. Visitors described a serenity in him, a sense of peace that came not from denial, but from acceptance. "He has made his peace with time," one aide said quietly. "He knows the world will carry on. He just hopes it carries on kindly." At Balmoral, where the royal family gathered in the summer of 2025, Prince William arrived with his family for what aides described as a private visit. The children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, were seen playing on the lawns, unaware of the weight that hung over the adults. For William, the visit was bittersweet. He knew it might be one of the last times his children would see their grandfather as they remembered him. Gentle, humorous, alive with curiosity. Charles had insisted they visit, wanting to show them the gardens one final time. The meeting between father and son that evening lasted nearly 2 hours. There were no cameras, no courtiers, just the two men and the quiet of the Scottish dusk. Later, those close to the family said William emerged with tears in his eyes, but a calmness in his voice. He said his father was proud of him, one confidant recalled. He said everything that needed to be said. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's return became the subject of intense speculation. Paparazzi waited at Heathrow, scanning each arriving flight for a glimpse of him. 4 days, there was nothing. Then, without fanfare, a black SUV was seen entering the palace gates one evening. The next morning, the palace confirmed that the Duke of Sussex had visited his father privately. It lasted less than an hour, but witnesses described it as deeply emotional. Whatever words were exchanged remained private, but sources close to both brothers say that meeting may have begun the slow process of reconciliation. In the press, the tone shifted from speculation to reflection. Newspapers ran long retrospectives on Charles's life, his decades as Prince of Wales, his environmental activism, his devotion to the arts. Documentaries replayed clips of him planting trees, visiting flood victims, sketching in his notebooks. The narrative emerging was not of a king fading from relevance, but of a man whose lifelong passions had finally found their place in history. He was ahead of his time. One commentator said he spoke of climate change before it was fashionable, of duty when the world prized freedom. His reign may be short, but his impact will be lasting. Public sentiment mirrored that respect. Candle-lit vigils continued nightly outside Buckingham Palace. Choirs sang hymns. Union Jacks flew at half-mast, not by decree, but by instinct. Even critics of the monarchy found themselves moved by the dignity of it all. The quiet courage of a king confronting mortality without spectacle. For a brief moment, Britain felt united again, not by politics or pageantry, but by empathy. Within the palace, preparations for transition intensified behind the scenes. Official documents were reviewed, speeches drafted, logistics rehearsed for what insiders delicately referred to as Operation Manibridge, the code name for the king's eventual passing. Yet those closest to Charles insisted there was still hope, still moments of brightness. He laughs. He reminisces. One staff member said, he tells stories about his childhood, about the gardens, about his mother. There's a sense of continuity. Even in decline, he reminds us of where we've come from. The Archbishop of Canterbury visited frequently, offering prayers and companionship. On one occasion, he led a small private service attended only by Charles, Camilla, William, and Anne. They sang softly, the sound barely rising above the whisper of the wind outside. Afterward, Charles reportedly said, "If my reign ends tomorrow, I'll leave knowing we did our best for this country." It was both confession and benediction. In Parliament, tributes began to surface in subtle ways. MPs from all parties spoke of the king's dedication, his lifelong service, his humor. One recalled a private audience in which Charles discussed architecture and agriculture with equal enthusiasm. He cared deeply about the details of life, the MP said, not just the grand symbols, but the soil beneath them. It was that humanity, perhaps more than his titles, that endeared him to the people. As autumn arrived, the palace released what would likely be the final official photograph of King Charles III. He was seated in his study, sunlight streaming through the window, a faint smile on his lips. On his desk lay a framed picture of Queen Elizabeth II and another of his sons as children. The image was simple, unembellished yet powerful. A man between generations, between duty and eternity. It became an instant icon, printed across front pages the next morning under headlines like "Grace until the end." In the weeks that followed, the world grew quieter. Public engagements were suspended and palace statements became rare. Then one evening, the palace gates closed earlier than usual, and word spread that family members had been summoned to Windsor. No announcement was made that night, but the next morning, the Prime Minister emerged from Downing Street in a dark suit. "His Majesty the King remains comfortable," she said softly, "and is surrounded by his family." The nation understood the message between the lines. Across the country, church bells tolled, not in mourning, but in prayer. People paused in shops, on buses, in offices, whispering words of hope. The moment felt suspended between two eras, between a king's final hours and a son's inevitable dawn. The monarchy once again stood on the threshold of history, its heart beating in time with the nation it had served for generations. And somewhere within Windsor's quiet halls, a father looked at his son one last time, not as a monarch to his heir, but as a man to the boy who would inherit not only his crown, but his burdens, his dreams, and his love for the land they both called home. It was in every sense the most human of goodbyes.